This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Hey. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a savior. Come quench my thirst, Lord. Because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. Water for the thirsty, yeah. I drink,
it's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You will find them when you seek them with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. Cause the time is coming soon when every eye gon' see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst, but the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink, refreshing ink flowing out of cups. This life they gotta touch, to liberate them out of cuffs. The faith is undivided trust, created us up out of dust. He's worthy of fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give her honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who decide to drink it
you're
up.
like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Been a hard weekend, it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer, I need you in my life. Times seem crazy, I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Hey. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite weak. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty.
Good night, everybody. Welcome to Water for the Thirsty. I am your host, Jared, and we are here at another Third Friday with Avani, Kenrick, and Darian. And we're going to chop it up and talk about some of the things we discovered about God in our reading plans, or maybe about us in relation to God, as we have been reading the books of Ecclesiastes, John, Kenrick's favorite book, the Psalms,
Yeah, my thing was open. It sounds like
and
read that.
Second Chronicles 2.
and Second Chronicles, because the reading plan is taking you through the story of certain characters, and as you encounter those characters, if they have any other books or related material in the Bible, we jump around to those in the section of the story that we're at. So that's why we're in following David and Solomon, and so now we're in Ecclesiastes.
I'm learning it the hard way. It's my first time going through this one. So I like, because I love 2 Samuel, I love 1 Kings. I'm just like, Song of Solomon. Okay, we go, Ecclesiastes. I get why you did it, but it's my first time. So.
Right. It just gives more depth to the character, so
yeah.
you can understand him a little bit better, and that way you get through all the stuff in the Bible in a connected and related manner. I had a question that came out of my reading this week from Ecclesiastes. Right, it was an interesting little dynamic that I discovered at the beginning of the book that I never saw before and never paid attention to, and thought it was interesting, and I thought I would share it with you guys. So if you could turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, sorry. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We are at, let's go 1, 2 to 3. 1 to 3. 1 to 3. Anybody can read that for me.
So, real quick, before we do it, no one knows who the author of Ecclesiastes is?
It's credit to Solomon.
It's credit to
Credit to
Solomon.
Solomon.
Well, it says,
But
the
is it-
words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was one of David's sons.
But Solomon was the only one
Yeah.
of his sons who was king. Right?
Yes.
So
So,
that should.
It's Solomon. No, I remember. I always thought it was Solomon, but I remember somebody was saying that we don't know. But yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this was also vanity. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 2.
Okay.
I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom.
pause there. Pause there. That is the part there that I was having trouble with. This man said, I'm going to check this stuff out.
When I get my mind right, then now I feel wise.
No. In my
I'm
right
dying.
mind, I'm
Right.
gonna sniff this coke and see what it does.
First of all, that's not.
I
First of all,
tried
wine-
sharing myself with wine and embracing folly. Not just...
So
not-
wine and Coke are not the same thing. Like, it's not even close.
keep going. Keep going.
It's
Keep going.
not-
So,
Keep going.
Close.
I'll start from the beginning. Verse 3. I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine while guiding my heart with wisdom.
My version says, my mind's still guiding me with wisdom. What does yours say?
What yours says.
What does yours say?
Verse 3. I resolved to have my body cheered with wine, my heart still devoted to wisdom. I resolved to embrace folly to see what made mankind happy.
So he's exploring stuff,
Everything.
but his mind is still guided with wisdom, and I found that difficult to swallow. How do you do that? How do you just do such like all the research? I'm gonna try it just to see what it's like, just to explore it.
Well, that's what most people do.
No. Well,
But with wisdom, he's saying.
yeah,
Like, you have all the wisdom in the world, but you like, let me go to the other side and see how they live.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now he'll know. Now instead
People
of
do that all the time.
Yeah, instead of being told about it, now he's actually going to go through it.
Yeah.
So and he's saying with wisdom, so I guess he knows on the other side of this, I will now know and be able to properly assess rather than seeing it and be like, oh, you can't do that.
By your
'cause
testimony, I'm just.
That's how I read it.
So you're saying, why should I have to try Coke to see that it's bad?
First of all, it's
Right,
not
no,
Coke.
no,
it's
no.
wine.
What is this with this cocaine?
He's the one who brought it up.
Go ahead.
Like it's not.
Read up until, let's read up until 9, and so we can set the context of what it is he said he did, right?
Why is Kendrick being the responsible one?
I'm just like, what?
Okay, verse 4. I made my works great. I built myself houses, and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of kings and of the princes of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds.
What does your version say there, Kenrick, for the lights of the sons of man?
Verse 8.
Sorry, I was going back to your quote and understand the concept. Like,
What
is
is
that
yours
saying?
saying?
No, mine says I hired beautiful singers, both women and men, and had beautiful concubines.
Okay. Mine says,
I had
and a
everything in
harem
man.
as well.
Yeah, I had everything.
Okay,
a man
so
could
was it just
desire.
singing and
This
entertainment?
verse 8?
Yeah.
What you got?
I don't have anything with concubines and
Yeah, I don't
and
see that
harems.
either.
Beautiful?
Nope.
I amassed silver and gold, the treasures of kings and provinces, acquired singing men and singing women, and every human luxury, chest on chest of it.
Huh?
Chest on chest.
Chest on chest, and it says
What kind of
persona.
I don't know.
version is that? What are y'all?
My Bible does have a
Culture.
note right next to harem.
Yeah.
It has an A and it says the meaning of this of the Hebrew for this phrase is
That's
uncertain,
certain. Okay.
which may account for why
Okay.
they're
But that's a big stretch, though.
what.
From singers to harem.
But he did have a harem.
He did.
No. But
this
that's what he's
verse-
saying. Like, you never got after singers. What do you have?
Male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men.
Which could be a harem.
And
Could
the
be.
delights of. So I've switched over to amplified, and it says, "And
Oh.
the delights and pleasures of men, many concubines."
Yeah, I was trying to find my note. It says the meaning of the word in post-biblical Hebrew. Others interpretations: a princess or princesses, a concubine or concubines, alluding to Solomon's harem.
Right. So we kind of uniform that he went and get all the women he could get. All right.
Now, we wonder, is this in addition to the 1,000 women that he had, or is this...
I
Well,
would
this
have
probably. I think it's
He's
cumulative.
describing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Verse 9. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me.
See. Read verse 10.
Yeah, whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor.
So basically, he said, if it's out there, I'm gonna try it. But
Yes.
all this time, my wisdom stayed with me.
Yes. I can get with that.
So if there was,
No code.
Cocaine.
Because there's not
Whatever was out there,
There's
he
not
tried.
even
like kerosene. Well,
that's what I'm
Wait a
saying.
minute. Wait a minute. I mean,
I'm not saying he did coke. I'm not saying that.
this
You
is
just
this
said he
is-
tried
this
it.
is
But
a-
something was mine. They had
Lay it out.
mind-altering
You
substances.
led
I
with.
used it as a hyperbole
Oh,
to make the point that whatever was available to him,
yes.
because he was trying to explore whatever he was trying to explore, in his wisdom, he tried his hand at everything.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, this is something I may be thinking too. I don't know.
Sorry,
He's saying
hold
his
on.
wisdom.
Hold on a second, Sam. We are reviewing thoughts coming out of the book of Ecclesiastes, and right now we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, trying to understand what it is Solomon did and had his wisdom at the same time. That's where we are for right now.
You thought you walked into an AA session?
I don't know where you walked into, but that's where we are right
I
now.
think what he does in this book that I think is so marvelous, because I actually just read it like right before I came, is 12 chapters, but he lays down a vicious scope of everything we can undertake in life, and then what the end of it all is. So when he's saying my wisdom never left me, this is the gift that God gave him, that he asked him whatever he wanted. He said, I'm going to give you wisdom and understanding. So if that stays, if that is staying with him, then the ability to see the scope of all of it allows him to walk into it, and he's like, look, I'm going to have a better... Instead of being like somebody who just wants to try something just to see what it is, out of curiosity, wisdom staying with him is just like, okay, I know I'm going to go through this. I see what the end of all is with other people, but now I'm going into it with the scope that this may be what I'm going to encounter as well.
So he's like, yeah,
So
we're
he's
going
coming
to talk
out-
and
he's
we're
coming
gonna
out
turn
of
up
it-
tonight.
Yeah, he's coming out of it with the expectation that he's going to know the full meaning of it. not to be subdued by it and be like completely chained up like so many other people because they don't know what they're getting into. But I got wisdom with me, so now I know I'm going to get into this folly, and I'm going to experience this folly, and on the other side of it, I will have a better understanding of this folly.
Now, did he have that same question?
Is this?
Did he have the same mindset with this as he did with the women? Because we see in 1 Kings, I believe 1 Kings 11, where he was rebuked for chasing these foreign women, and his heart was turned away.
Can't no man deal with all that.
Okay. But so he went into, with all his wisdom intact,
Right, exactly.
he went into these affairs
Right.
with women who were strange women,
Right.
and I'm wondering if his wisdom must not have left him there either, right?
Is at the end of Solomon's life, doesn't he come back around?
Yeah.
At the end of his life?
Which is why we can't
he
take a couple chapters out of Ecclesiastes. You have to read the
If
whole
it
book.
were not for all them women, he would have had no flaw because we saw his fatal flaw. The same thing that his father experiences. All these women, he's trying to please them. What did he end up doing? And he did exactly what the Most High told him was going to happen after he dedicated the temple, which we read about earlier in the reading. He was like, "If you leave me, I'm telling you, I'm going to rebuke. I'm going to take my name off of this temple that you're building for me and everything. If you go and serve other gods." What did the women do? He wanted to please them, so he served other gods to
So we
please
do
them.
agree that he left God.
Yeah, to follow,
Okay.
to
So
serve
this,
other gods.
so
for the
this
women.
isn't so
it's-
because
it's a
what I'm
it's a
getting is like this is like a
technicality.
case study.
It's
Like,
a-
is he doing a case study?
That's what it would appear
That's-
like.
That's
what
what,
yeah,
that's what,
Ecclesiastes-
in order to write
In
Ecclesiastes.
yes, like
Well, no,
so
no.
you're
It looks
saying
like he's writing Ecclesiastes after
in retrospect. In
after
retrospect.
he
Got it.
after he went through
That
the
makes sense.
process.
That
it's
makes
like the dude
I don't
that's
think he
like,
intended
or the
to
lady
write
that's
the
like,
book.
I'm gonna live homeless for a year
To see what it's like.
to see what it's like. That's what you're.
Right.
And for me, like the first thing I do is like for this is
That's
like, I've been kind of
so
like
that's what I thought I saw him saying, and I brought it to you to ask you guys: is that what you're seeing as well, or are you seeing something else? Because that's what I thought I was seeing. He said, "I'm gonna be homeless. I'm gonna get all these women. I'm gonna drink wine. I'm gonna embrace folly. I'm gonna build houses. I'm gonna do all these things just to explore what these things are like. But I'm gonna keep my wisdom. Somehow managing to keep." He's saying, in retrospect, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. In this, my wisdom stayed with me. So after the fact, he's saying, all that time, I had my wisdom with me the whole time.
I think that's hindsight 2020, personally. I mean, the text in 1 Kings clearly says, 1 Kings 11, chapter 6 says, Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and did not fully follow the Lord as did his father David. So he was basically on the same plane as the evil kings, the Jeroboams and the Rehoboams of the world. But he came back. Like Manasseh came back. Can you say that God was with him the whole time? No. He had that moment of clarity. He says, you know what? Maybe I've seen both sides. Now, fear God and keep his commandments.
My dude said, in all this, my wisdom stayed with me.
So
Easy
that's
to
the
say
thing,
after the
wisdom,
fact.
but wisdom, just because God gave you something doesn't mean that you're using it for what you need to be using it for, right?
It's very difficult to
Like,
go
it's-
against that if you have wisdom and understanding, because it would pretty much
Inform-
dictate you to follow that line.
Right?
Instead of being this,
Having wisdom doesn't necessarily mean that you're making the right decision.
According to Solomon, read Proverbs. That's what he says. Wisdom
have-
keeps you away from that woman who's trying to get you away from your wife.
So somebody define wisdom, because wisdom is
I'm loving it.
wisdom is
Fear of the Lord is wisdom.
wisdom is abstract. Like wisdom doesn't like I
Fear of the
can
Lord is
have
beginning
all
of
the wisdom in the world, but that it still takes an action.
So, the definition I found is quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. The quality of being wise. And
I can
then-
have good judgment and still make bad decisions.
But then it
I
also
know what I
points
should
out-
do, and I'm still like,
A part of the definition says having experience, so you kind of have to go south sometimes.
But he got the wisdom before he had the experience. Like God's like, you don't have to
Yes.
go through any of that. I'm
Yeah.
giving you the wisdom right now, so you don't have to go through.
So, definition wisdom. This is an introduction to the wisdom books. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Songs of Solomon. And it says the word translated wisdom by definition means masterful understanding skill. It's in Proverbs particularly, it refers to the skill of godly living with respect to God and people. In this respect, wisdom is distinct from knowledge, but cannot be had apart from it. So it's the use of knowledge, the masterful use of knowledge in a contextual manner. Contextualizing knowledge and principles and the ability to do that is wisdom.
So you can't have wisdom without the application of that.
Right. So they go ahead and they explain the Wright brothers flew the first airplane because they had first figured out the fundamental laws of aerodynamics. A mechanic's skill depends on his knowledge of the motor. The wise have social skill because they know personally and not merely about proverbs and sayings in the book. This knowledge is gained in the fear of the Lord, which entails humbly accepting the book's instruction. Disciples embrace the sage's knowledge and wisdom because they trust and fear the Lord. As cement without water cannot produce mortar.
I can't
the
buy
proverb
that.
without faith submits the Lord's wisdom. The proverb without faith that submits to the Lord's word cannot produce wisdom. Yeah.
I don't buy it. Because if you have to have experience, or there has to be an action associated with this information in order to get wisdom. I'm looking at it from a formula, like X plus Y equals, right?
I mean,
and you got it, and then, well, I mean that's what it says, right? There has to be an action associated with this information in order for it to equal wisdom, right? But God gave
wisdom
him
is the ability to apply the knowledge. It's the application of the knowledge that is wisdom. That's my understanding anyway. It's not
it's
just
the application of the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. It's a skill of godly living.
That's what that sounds like to me, just having good judgment.
But you said something that was interesting. You said it's possible to have bad judgment. No, it's possible to have good judgment and still make a bad decision. Is that really true?
Mm-hmm.
So you can have good judgment.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's possible.
Yeah.
So you basically
do it all the
So
time.
you have a moment of weakness. but okay. So does that mean that you have good judgment?
Yes.
Yes.
Yo, I tell you.
So how do you define good judgment then? How do you define good judgment?
I can give you the best advice in the world, and he'll be like, "Yo, this dude's on it." Yo,
And
if
then
you
still
never follow your own good advice,
Okay,
like
you
you
talking-
know what's going on, and you're just like, "Nah, I'm still."
So you're talking theory versus practical. So in theory, I can tell you all of the good things to do, but I don't put it into practice.
No, sometimes it's
Sometimes
circumstantial.
like
circumstance.
Yeah.
As well. Can inform that. Like, you know it's not right to do this thing, and you know in your heart of hearts and all things being equal, or you won't do this. But somebody have a gun to your head and you do it. Does that mean you exercise bad judgment?
But not even gun to your head. It's just
Right.
like it's just
You
you know
just
like you've done it before, right? Like I've been faithful to my wife, right? And I don't put myself in bad positions. I don't do all that. I know that, right? And I've acted on it for years and years and years. And then I get into a situation and I know what's right. I have good judgment. I know what I should do. And I'm just like, oh, but it's fat.
So bring it back to Solomon. You're saying,
Okay.
you're saying,
I'm sorry, it's not even that.
So you're saying Solomon had that good judgment. He knew exactly what was right, what was wrong.
I'm saying
with
Solomon
that
says that.
wisdom-
I'm saying Solomon is saying this.
And my problem, but the reason why I'm saying all this is because God gave him wisdom.
Right.
Like he gave him. You can't have the application at that point. Like he gave it to you, and you said it before
He had an
all
experience.
these experiences and all these things happened. Like he gave him the wisdom. So if he gave him wisdom, and the wisdom automatically creates good decisions, it doesn't.
That's why I wrestled with this.
So
Hold
I
on.
see what you-
Jerome, Jerry says, another Jerry, not the one you know.
Okay.
Lucifer was perfect in wisdom and understanding, but chose to sin. Adam and Eve, also perfect in wisdom and understanding, chose to sin. Application of that wisdom, choosing to act according to that wisdom, is what's key.
So I'll push back on the Adam and Eve, because I was thinking about that. Eve, I don't know if Adam and Eve had wisdom.
I don't know either. I think
Because
they were naive.
They were dependent.
Because she wanted more
Yeah.
to know more. That was the whole point of
The temptation.
right? And that's what, like, when we were talking about this subject, that's what I was going back to, was Eve, because she was searching for this wisdom, this understanding, and then God was like, I'm not giving it to you. Like, you don't need that. And then you contrast that to Solomon, where he's like, 1,000 years later, how many thousand years later, and now you here.
I still look at it, Jared, because I see what your dilemma is when you're going over it, but I still look at it as, okay, when he got the wisdom and understanding from the Most High, from the meeting, I believe he got the capacity to go into any situation and look at it from a perspective or from a scope that we usually don't do. There's no naivety, but there's one thing that's primarily missing about knowing about something, the actual experience with it. And being able to have wisdom and go into it and know, once I experience this, now I will have everything covered. I have the wisdom about it, but I myself haven't gone through it. You know what I'm saying? I haven't experienced it myself. And I'm saying this, testifying to myself. There was some things, I got good counsel on one subject in particular from several people. Still did not listen and went through it myself. But now you cannot tell me.
Yeah.
Now it's like in concrete.
Right.
In my heart, it's like, no, I know
Right.
now.
But I was gonna say, like, you might tell Sam or Julian, hey, don't touch the stove, it's hot.
Right.
But
right.
to them, it's kind of like, I kind of want to touch the stove. But it's not until they touch the stove and realize, oh, I should not touch the stove. Now they have wisdom to know, okay, from here on out, we don't touch the stove.
And it's not
I
just
think you have to experience it sometimes.
It's not just the blind thought of daddy's just telling me no, he don't want me to touch it. That's the naivety walking into
Right.
it. He just don't want me to touch the stove because it might be all right. Don't touch the socket, same thing. But now it's, instead of looking at it like that, it's like, this stove is hot. It's going to be at a temperature I don't really, it's not going to be pleasant when I touch it. But I'm going to touch it to see how hot it actually is. So now, and I'll see my skin and I'll know that it's burnt. It's like a whole different mind expression going into the situation where it's not just as simple as, I'm going to just touch it because I don't think.
And are you calling that wisdom?
Well,
Or the process of
the other side of it, not me just wanting to touch it, but knowing.
I'm saying going through the process and going.
Experience.
Yeah.
That's
That's
what
where
he's
you are.
describing. All of this, the wisdom stayed with me.
That's where you are.
Well, that's where I was wrestling with.
Yeah.
And I'm wrestling with it because it'll appear like God lets Solomon explore.
Not even
He
that.
does.
I'll take it to the next level.
God lets Solomon explore all of this
Take
with
it
his
next
wisdom.
level. Because what did Solomon ask for? In 1 Kings 3, all he asked for was what?
Wisdom.
Now, what did God give him?
Everything else.
Everything else. Now,
With the wisdom.
to me, that's a setup.
Right?
It's like,
it was
more
all a
gold,
setup.
more riches, more women
Right.
than anybody before you.
but nobody but Solomon could write the books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes from the perspective of having tasted everything.
Everything.
And now
Right.
saying, before you even try it, I've done it.
Yeah.
And so you have the progression of the entire book
Right.
where there's no reason for us to try it. So, I mean, wisdom does not give you
It's
experience.
every reason to try it.
Because he tried it.
Hold on.
And he's
I
like,
mean, not on
it's useless.
TV. I'm
I
not.
think the way it's set up, the fact that Proverbs comes before it is significant. Because
Yes.
Proverbs has a bunch of reasonable statements. Just 2 lines. If you do this,
Yes.
this is going to happen.
Right.
Be like this so you can avoid this. It's like these warnings. And then you say, okay, why are you giving me these warnings?
But
Boom.
I
Ecclesiastes.
know,
You got the whole scope.
right,
Yeah.
I know, don't do this when this comes up because I have done it all.
Right. And only a man who, just like you said, this is when the Most High came to him and was so impressed by his request. He's like, I'm gonna make you
Richest,
rich and smart to understand
wise.
before anybody, and then nobody after. That's a lot. That you're talking about responsibility. And so when you writing, you have to have that type of mind. He's like, when Solomon etches this stuff, like I know he's going to do, because I know the beginning from the end, this is going to benefit so many people, because I told in the beginning, I'm going to make your wisdom matchless.
That's where I was wrestling. But before I get into that, I want to bring Jerry back in. He asks, so can we have wisdom with our personal experience, or can we learn from the experience of others?
I think both. Like, for me, I look at my parents went through a divorce, and I look at the effects that divorce have on my parents, and I'm like, I'm not going down that road. There's certain things that she does or she did in the past, and I'm just like, I'm never going to do that because I don't want that end result. But there are other things where I'm just like, no, I need to try this for myself.
But I don't know if that's, but is that, I don't know. I don't think you can have wisdom without the experience.
But okay, for
I
example,
mean, it's indirectly an experience, though.
little wisdom.
They got little wisdom.
Kendrick, it's an indirect experience.
No. You can learn. You can be a student, but in order to give wisdom,
if you see the dude break his neck, right? Trying that trick.
That's not necessarily wisdom. You're a fast learner.
But I can learn. But I can learn from that experience. Okay,
You can learn. You're a learner.
Okay, going back to the infidelity experience, you've seen so many bad situations of people that cheated on their spouse.
Yes.
I can learn from that without having to do it myself.
That's not wisdom. That's learning.
Is that good judgment?
Wisdom is being able to,
Is that good judgment?
Good judgment? Yeah, that's probably good judgment.
So
depending on what you're, I don't know. Depends on how you're.
What is wisdom there?
What's that?
What is wisdom?
See, to me, the wisdom is to not have to go through that.
Wisdom has to. I think wisdom's tied to the experience. You can only get wisdom.
Wait. So you say I can only be wise about being faithful to my wife
No.
by having the experience of cheating on her.
Yes.
That's the only way I can be wise about it.
No.
Exactly. So I should be able to be wise enough to extract without having to experience and go down that path. I should be able to.
So where I was, yes, I'm agree with you on that.
So if you're wise, you have wisdom.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, I would too.
So
That's
if
the simplest
one
thing you
plus
said all
no,
night.
no, that's the thing. 1 + 1 is 2, right? If you're wise, you have wisdom, but it doesn't make sense to me.
You're a gardener, you work in a garden. Right?
Yes.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean you're a gardener.
Well, if you work at a garden, it doesn't
It
necessarily
doesn't necessarily mean you're a gardener.
Yeah, you could be the carpenter fixing it.
That's true.
Yes.
I got
that's
you.
true.
But if you're wise, you have wisdom.
Maybe. I don't know.
So here's where I was. That if God anticipates or even designs that he's going to use dude and his embracing of folly to bless 1 million people, is it possible that can happen in another experience at another time? That God allows some other people to walk through some things,
Oh, agree with that.
Oh,
Yes.
I think that's the part
but
of the
walk through some
testimony.
things that seem to be an embracing of folly
right.
That's testimony.
Yeah.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up too.
because of the benefit that comes to them
From
Yes.
on hindsight. Now, these people may not be
They're
know,
not
just
forced to do
fools,
it.
But it's
they're not
different.
fools, and then they're not navigating it from the getting caught up, but they're in it, understanding that. Right? Can they really understand that this is bigger than that, or
They don't
are they
know
just,
that.
or are they,
You
or are they
and
just they're just going wholeheartedly in it, and out of it comes some kind
That's
of
it.
But you,
some learning.
yes. But what you and Brad were talking about is not that. What Brad was referencing was like you are consciously going into this thing,
That's a
and
case
you're
study.
saying, and you're
Yeah.
saying, all right, I'm gonna go in here and we're gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna experience this, so I can talk
was
about it
solid.
or write it down or
That was
or-
solid.
That would. So that's not just people just having a testimony.
Well, I'm not talking about having a testimony. I'm talking about trying to.
There has to be intention, but based upon what you guys like your intent. He intended to go into this thing and
I'm
come
gonna
out on the
try
other side.
everything. I ain't gonna refuse nothing.
I'm gonna
at
give
the
it.
end of
I'm
all,
gonna give it
Yeah,
a full go.
Yes.
If we turn it up and we getting twisted, we getting twisted.
Yes.
But see,
All
those
the
are two
way.
separate components. The desire to go all out is one component, and the desire to do it with the end of having the perspective to write about it is something totally different.
Correct.
A lot of people go
I
into
don't
it
know
going
that
all
he was.
out.
I don't know that
Correct.
he had the perspective to write about it.
That's
more
what-
than he
But
had.
that's what you're saying.
He
That's
had
what
a
Brad's saying.
perspective.
Yeah.
He has a perspective to understand it,
With the
and
purpose-
which may never come to a writing about it to share.
But-
It may just be personal understanding. I really want to understand what this thing is. I'm looking for, because he says it.
Yes,
I'm
I get
looking
that.
for meaning.
Right.
I'm looking for meaning in life, and I've been going this path where I don't know anything about that, and maybe that has meaning, and I don't know anything about that, and maybe the satisfaction of life actually comes from that, and maybe the satisfaction of life actually comes from this thing over here. But I've been walking this path, and now I really want to know where satisfaction in life comes from. I want to know what is going to be valuable in life. So I'm a leave my pastoring job and become an actor or a basketball player or whatever, just because
Or a
I-
pastor.
I want because I want to be happy, right? I want to enjoy this life here on earth. And then after you explore it fully, you realize, yeah, there was nothing in that.
Nothing in it.
And so I'm wondering if, because it doesn't seem like God kind of hedged him in any.
Not at all.
Well, I
Everything
think
was based on his choice.
He did hedge him in because he didn't die. Like,
Well, he had
Well,
his
but
protection.
you- but
For
you're
the
saying
sake
that
of
his-
his, for his father, he had his hand on.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
he was hedged.
But I
But
talking
he
about
did-
hedge.
He
I'm
wasn't
talking about
forced to
hedge.
make this
I was talking
decision.
about hedge in terms of the experiences. He didn't kind of protect him from this and move him from that. He just kind of allowed him to explore.
With the power and the responsibility he had, that's why I think his range was so wide, because he was the greatest. He was literally the greatest in both riches and wisdom. There was nobody who equaled him. And I look at what Jared said. He's like, can that be done nowadays? I think one determining factor also is the desire, which helps us, people with certain testimony, because they had the desire to do this. But now when they went through it, they realized, hey man, if you have this same desire like I did, I can tell you what happened in retrospect. But that's only particular. We didn't have that type of wisdom. You know what I'm saying? People who were following desire. Solomon had it, just like I said, with the perspective, I'm gonna experience all this, and I'm gonna tell you the end of all of it at the end. That's the only difference I see between like him and us. And can that happen again? It may, but I don't think anybody else is getting wisdom like that to even consider it.
Now there is a temptation to think that God is playing chess with people, with Job, the thing going on behind the scenes, with even Lucifer. I mean, Lucifer kind of was a setup as well, making him very wise and beautiful and right outside the Godhead,
Right outside.
knowing what was going to happen. But because of what Lucifer did, affliction will never rise again. Everyone knows, there's no doubt in anyone's mind. Because of what Solomon did, now, I still might want to try X, Y, and Z, but someone has been there and done that. So God set up in a way that he gave him everything, but he also gave Solomon the choice. Solomon could have chose to stay loyal to God, and none of this would ever happen. But I believe that because God knows the beginning from the end, he allows these things to happen
He allowed that.
with the benefit that we can look
We
back
can't
after the
see-
fact.
Yeah, we see it now.
So
Yeah,
can you be with God
Absolutely.
and working within the wisdom God has given you, and do things that are directly contrary to who God is?
I believe
Yes.
so.
Well, it said he left God in 1 Kings. It said his heart turned, he did evil, and the Lord rebuked him, sent adversaries. So there definitely was some kind of separation for
At
some
some-
time.
at some point.
At some point.
At some
Get him
point.
back on
Right.
line.
Now I believe that when you have your moment of clarity and you can sit and you can see the entire picture with the wisdom, and now you're writing, you have I don't want to say hindsight 2020, but you have a better perspective where things are kind of cleaned up because you see everything. But when it was actually happening, I believe, yeah, he was out there.
But left God is, I mean,
I didn't say he left God. I was saying that he was.
no, when we're talking, like,
Yeah.
left God is,
Subjective.
there's no time associated with it. Like, I can leave God in the morning, like 8 a.m.,
Okay.
and we're back together at 10. Right? Or I can leave God in 2016, and we're back together in 2030. Like, there's, I mean, so, yes,
the leave God is so strong.
Was that again?
It's like leave. You can't really. Nobody can really leave God.
Well,
it's just,
technically.
it's like
In
turn
your
your
heart.
attention. Yeah, in your heart. You turn
Yes.
your attention away from. it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that because that leave God thing. That part,
I'm just using the word that was
I
used.
understand.
in the-
Right,
I
right.
understand.
Because he's not going to leave us, obviously.
Right.
Correct.
But we,
Correct.
Right.
So, Dana, I think this is your sister,
Oh.
says, based on the dictionary, wisdom comes from experience. So I guess she's supporting your thought process on that.
Thank you, Dana.
The quality, she then puts the definition: the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment, the quality of being wise. Cleon adds, but God gives freedom of choice. He chose and made bad decisions and wrote about it. See, and that's where I'm having the struggle. Were these things bad decisions? Especially because he didn't do all bad things.
We're just gonna use your initial thing about coke, and that's a bad
It's a bad
decision.
decision.
Like that's not a good decision.
Nah.
But to experiment and see what the actual effects are, is
Bad
that a bad
decisions.
decision?
Yes.
Yeah.
How can you know what the effects are? People do tests on. They use rats to test coke all the time.
I mean, rats don't have a soul or salvation.
You're missing
How you know
you're
that?
missing my point.
Because they're rats.
You're missing my
They're
point. So
nasty.
the only way for some things, the only way to have the understanding of what it
do
is
it.
is to do it, and somebody has to try it to know.
Yo,
Somebody
I'm
has to
with
take the
Jared.
L to
I feel
know.
like there's certain things
I
where
mean-
I'm just like, nah, I have to.
So that's what I'm saying. I don't know that
Certain
it's a bad.
things.
I don't know that it's a bad decision to do it.
Like what?
Well, I ask you, how would you define? Because you said there's certain things I'm like I can learn from somebody else, and other things like now I want to try for myself. So what would
Depends on
you?
desire.
What would you? What would
Right.
you think?
Depends on desire.
Man, you asking personal questions.
He put it out there.
This thing not going away. What she said is out there. Take a second, think about it. I'm gonna read Cleon. Yeah. He made bad decisions and wrote about it. God's permissiveness does not equal his endorsement of your actions. His love is therefore, he is long suffering. Jerry comes back, also based on the dictionary, the fact of being based on sensible or wise thinking. God gave him a gift of wisdom before he ever experienced any of the things he did. Wisdom comes from God because he's all-knowing. Dana. He didn't have to experience it because he's all-knowing. Cleon says, OMG, to something I said. I don't remember. But he says, OMG. Are you ready with something?
So I went to a birthday gathering and I hadn't eaten for the entire day. And the first thing I had was a drink. And I kind of like, it was gone in a minute. And I knew I was driving home, but I had the drink. And from that, the end result of it was that somebody else had to drive my car because I was not in a position to drive my car, and they almost crashed my car. So I learned through going through that experience. Shut up. I learned through that experience when I drive, I just don't drink. If I'm driving, I don't drink. But that came from somebody almost crashed my whole car, and that person had never driven on the highway before, and we had to get on the highway to get home.
Wait. So you started
Probably
driving.
shouldn't drink.
No,
So you didn't. So you didn't try driving at all.
No, at all.
I didn't drive.
That's just bad
I-
decision. You probably shouldn't drink.
Not on empty
Like
stomach.
not
too.
even drive. Like just don't. And walk and think.
I mean, so when I realized I was not in a position, like I got up to exit the restaurant, and I was like, oh.
I can't drive.
That's a bad decision.
But now I know.
But yeah, all the things that he did here went bad though.
Like what?
He explored everything. He built building projects.
Yeah. Okay.
He planted
okay.
vineyards. He made gardens.
Okay. Yeah,
He
yeah.
made reservoirs. I mean, he just explored the things of life.
Sure.
Correct.
Because he was searching for meaning in the things of life. And to explore the meanings of the things of life, searching for meaning, he has to explore good and what people may consider bad, because
Right, it's
what people
I
may
got
consider bad may have value.
Positive, yes.
Well,
Because you can stay up with coke.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. There might be, you might come to the place that there might be nothing, because he starts to say there's nothing better to do in life than,
Eat and drink and be merry. Yeah.
right. Which is my next thing, but
He said it several times.
yeah, he says it like
Actually,
4 times.
Well, this is why you can't read just the first couple chapters of Ecclesiastes. Because like if you just pull that out, I mean, that's straight out of context. This is like, wow, I found my text. I prayed and I opened the Bible and I went there. I said, boom, I'm good to go. I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry. And it's in the Bible. That's why we have to have the context.
So I guess still asking, is it possible that God can sometimes take some people and allow them to explore as part of his bigger and bolder and diviner plan?
I think
Yes.
But was that his will, though?
I mean,
So I have a. Can I kind of move from
That's a really
chapter
good
2
question.
real quick?
Mm.
So Ecclesiastes chapter 9.
you're on 9 already?
Yes, that was today.
Oh, today's lesson. Today's reading.
Oh, 8 and 9, yeah. You 6 and 7 was yesterday. Yeah. You're right.
So verse 11 says. Wait, let me see if I can go back. Verse 11 says, I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, but time and chance happens to them all. Moreover, no one knows when their hour will come. A fish is caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare, so people are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. There was another one, chapter 7, 15 and 16. Verse 15, in this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these. The righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? So, when I saw that, I was like,
Can you read that all out? Do not be over wicked, do not be a fool. Why die before your time? Summary. It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes.
right. And so I started to ask myself, so we are taught that God is actively involved in every single part of our decisions and lives, and I was kind of just like, this kind of says to me, he may not necessarily be that involved. I'm not to say that he's not involved, but don't be on the extreme. Just live in the middle. If I feel like you are getting in the way of my will, I'm gonna check you, but live in the middle.
But there's a shift that he has when he writes, when you're reading this book, where he's like, well, the poor and the rich, the wise and the foolish, the righteous and the unrighteous, they all go to the same place, and one is not better than the other. So you see him kind of wrestling with this uselessness of life. And so you're like, at this point, where is this? Basically the middle of the book. So where is he in that shift? Is he still on the, I'm going to try everything and life is useless, I'm depressed, or is he starting to come to the other side?
He's probably coming to the other side.
He's coming to the other side because it's the end of the book.
So if that's the case, you can see why he's kind of on this, don't be overly righteous. He's not all the way over to fear God. This is the journey of mankind to do what God wants you to do. So he's still kind of in the middle there. That's how I see it. Now, there are people that will discredit Solomon, particularly those who don't believe in the soul sleep. In terms of when you die, you don't go straight to heaven. Because we get 9:5 that says the dead know nothing. And so they say, well, how are you going to cherry pick that and call that truth? But he also talks about eating and drinking and being merry. So we have to see where he is in the chapter or in the book and understand what his thought process is. And if it's all inspired word, then we have to take everything. We can't just take some things and spit some things out. You see what I'm saying? So that's a difficulty a lot of people have with this book and with his writings, because it's like, well, if it's all inspired, then why can't I take this as gospel? Why, you know what I mean? Why do I have to reject any of this?
Context is key for all of those questions, because the Bible does say there is no God.
Well, the fool says there's.
The Bible says there is no God if it's all inspired. If it's all inspired, why do we need the first part of the sentence? We can just read the second half of it.
Yeah.
So context to me is important.
Hold on. Darian asked a question about will.
Was it God's will that Solomon do this experimentation? Because you said that God can use it. Just like he can use that drunk person.
I think that's a
who's
really
now
good
bad.
question.
I mean, it all depends on how you're defining God's will.
So
Go ahead.
that was kind of where, from reading those two sections, that was kind of where, like, what is God's will? And is every decision in my life a part of his will? Or, like...
But it's like, and the first thing I thought about was Jeremiah 29:11. Like, that was the first thing that came to my mind, right? And his will is not for you to perish. Like, it's
Thoughts of peace and not evil.
and so, I don't know if there are other verses that may, you know, because once again, talk about, you know,
Choose life and not
context. Choose life and like that. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, Joshua, like, it's
Yeah.
all that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so it's hard for me to say that it was necessarily his will for him to do it.
Since the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world, was it his will that sin came into the world? I mean, like,
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the Lamb was slain before the foundation. Like, so,
Because he knew it was going to happen.
right. So my dad introduced me to term perfect will and permissive will.
Yes.
You know, and the thing that he wants to happen and the thing that he allows to happen because it still gets him to the
Yes.
same place. And I think that isn't part of the thing that we have to look at in terms of will. You know, I don't know that God is sitting there saying, I want this to happen, more than he's saying, allow that it will help. Allow that it could still work.
Sure,
And allow that because I've given them free will. And this is a choice that they decide to make.
correct.
Right.
I can get that's yes.
So a couple people have chimed in. Sam asks, if Solomon truly had wisdom, then why did he venture into so much fault with the woman, etc.? Which I think Ecclesiastes chapter 2 is attempting to answer.
Beyonce's too.
What? What'd you say?
Let me next.
I hear what you said.
Huh? No, he asked. He asked. I said the only thing better than one Beyonce is two. Like, that's why he did it. Like, that's why every dude that does it does
But then
it.
I also feel like folly is really subjective. Because remember we were talking about the whole Esther thing? Or even Rahab. Like, we could look at them and be like, yeah, they were a little out of control. Like, Esther had to, you know, she had to give it up. And we would look at that and go, yeah, that's not okay. But it was all a part of God's
And if you
plan.
were wise, you would stand firm on your convictions and allow them to kill
It
you.
was, but it was not a part of his will. Like, it's permissive, right? He had to.
I'm almost scared to ask. What do you mean that Esther had to give it up?
I mean, come on, dude.
No, we can't do it.
I just want to clarify for those who didn't see the previous.
You don't have to read the Jesus, you just have to read the Bible.
Yeah, like-
The king was knocking them off to see which one he wanted. And then when he knocked them off, they had to go and live somewhere where women who got knocked off lived because they couldn't remarry.
Yeah.
So, and they were all
They were
virgins.
shamed. Yeah.
And so,
And he had the best night of his life.
and he had the best night of his life because he wake up the next morning, he gave away gifts, he
Gave-
declared a holiday, all them kind of things he
Up
did.
to half his kingdom. Have you ever
From a virgin.
I'm married and I don't know. Like, it's great. Like, it's phenomenal. But half, just off of the experience once. Like,
Yeah.
she was legit.
And
But
I'm
as I
saying,
said, folly is subjective. Because we tend to think this one-minded and God's like,
because her take on it is that God put her here. She is here to save the people. So she gave it up to, as part of the call.
But that was before the threat even came. I mean, you're talking about you're talking about the process of choosing a queen. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so that's before the threat and Haman, any of that stuff came up. So in her mind, what is her?
But God saw.
But I mean, didn't
God
her
saw
uncle
the first
send her?
perspective.
Didn't her uncle send her to try to preserve?
It was after.
No, she was taken.
She was taken.
Yeah, she was
taken.
taken because she was beautiful. And so, I mean, the Bible
Sorry,
doesn't
VeggieTales,
give.
my
Okay, but Essie, right? Yeah, the Bible doesn't give all of those details, but we understand,
Yeah,
you know,
so
historically.
They weren't tickling everybody forever either.
Perpetual tickling. That's what it is. Only because I have kids. That's what
But I mean, in terms of will, that's almost like saying that it wasn't God's will that Joseph went to Egypt either as a slave. You know, like Which is it?
Okay, so check this.
Which
So-
is it?
So Christ said offenses must come, just like he said that the Son of Man must be sacrificed, but woe unto the person who is doing the betraying. Woe unto the person who... So, yes, Joseph had a plan, or Joseph was used for a purpose, but his brothers were not blameless. Like, they didn't have to do that.
Agreed.
But weren't
And
they-
that's
But his,
They had
But his
it
plan
had to
was-
play out that way in order for it didn't have to.
God allowed it to play.
God allowed
God
it.
allowed it to play out
Yeah,
that way.
But the brothers had a choice to be jealous and to do what they did, or God could have used it a different way.
And Esther had a choice to stay chaste and die, or give it up and save her people. Like, I mean,
Or stay chased and just hope that she
Yeah.
doesn't die.
but that that's
Clearly, that option was not on the table.
I don't think it was.
No.
I mean, but I'm saying that to say that sometimes
You killed all Cradle Roll stories.
I mean, all we can do is speculate. Then, I mean, as far as what his will would have been. I mean, the way it happened, we see the benefit on the aftermath of it. We see what happened with Egypt became the most powerful nation because of the 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty. The tribes of Israel were brought to Egypt after because they went to go find Joseph, and then
But then the slavery came.
then slavery came after
Because they were there.
Right, because they were there. I
Right.
understand, but from that point came the
But
Exodus.
even the length of time they were there though, like they were looking at it like it's been forever. Like we've been getting
They didn't know
destroyed
nothing about it.
forever. But
Yeah,
God
Will
was
gets-
working
Will
through.
gets tough.
God was like, yo, let me get to these other people out here
Right.
during the time that you're catching the L because I'm trying to redeem them too.
Everybody.
So what I'm getting at is that it is not fair to necessarily simply look at someone's actions
And
and
pull it
determine
forward.
that they're not wise
Right.
in the moment of the thing that they engaged in, because you don't know what God is working with them, through them, and for everyone else.
Well, I'll give you an example. So,
I'm saying that because of what happened here in Solomon.
okay, so
Because you
Solomon.
could look at Solomon doing some of these things,
Right.
and I'm not talking about the very obvious.
Yeah.
The woman did lead his heart astray because he had to keep them happy. He had to bow and worship the gods, and as a king, that was a bad example, and God took him to task for that. Right? I ain't talking about that, but to see the king over there getting drunk, so to speak, to sit and to assume that because he's engaged in that somehow he is no longer wise, is to me this is a caution against that kind of assessment,
Yeah.
because you'd have the same kind of caution for Esther and you would have the same kind of caution for Rahab. Rahab should not have lied. She should not have lied.
But she didn't know better because she was that's very different.
My point is
I see what
that
you're saying.
when you are faithful to a certain level of understanding, or let's put it this way, the midwives should not have lied, right? They lied and God blessed them.
Right.
That's what the text says. They told the king that they couldn't get there in time because the women were
Right.
vigorous, and the text says God blessed them
bless
because
them.
they didn't kill the Hebrew boys, right? And so that's why I'm saying it appears that there is. God has bigger concerns in the things that the minutia that we may dwell in, that allows for things to be that work out for some kind of benefit in His perfect will, that sometimes we shouldn't necessarily get involved in or cast aspersions towards.
Agreed.
That's what it would look like, and I'm asking, is that a fair conclusion, or would you caution me to consider something else?
Subjective, the subjective nature of morality, we can never go to that realm where we're saying, well, morality is good for whatever satisfies the circumstance that you're in. The Hebrew midwives, I contend, had a conviction from the Most High that this is what they were supposed to do. Just like Daniel and his three friends. I mean, they
But that
knew,
conviction from the Most High caused them to speak an untruth.
caused them.
Comes her.
Well, whichever one.
The midwives.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
and-
Yes. Yes.
caused them to speak untruth.
And it's very possible that they didn't have to lie, but they still follow a conviction. And in their frailty in that moment, they told a lie, but God still blessed because He knew the condition of their heart. Solomon was told beforehand, do not go this path. He was given the wisdom. He saw how David was. David was constantly in wars. And so Solomon's like, like you said, I've seen my parents get divorced. I don't want that. Solomon's like, I've seen my father fight all these battles. He's dying at 70 years old, and he's just frail, and he's cold, he's weak. I don't want that. So how do I do that? I engage in alliances with other nations. And how do I do that? I marry these women.
How do I keep them happy?
How do I keep them happy? So it's a path. It goes down a path with the wisdom that he got, that had his land virtually war-free for the most of his reign, got him to this path of one compromise leading to another, and now he's doing exactly what God told him not to do.
I think we have to be careful of how we define good and evil.
That's it. That's it. That's
So
it
how
for
do we
me.
define good and evil then?
I feel as if it has to be an individual thing, because God might tell me
I'm not there. I'm not there. I was with you, but I'm not there.
God might tell me, shoot Jared. And
in the
you
balls.
right.
Kick him in the
And
balls. Let's go with that one.
you might think, why would you do that?
Right.
Yep.
But God told me to do it.
Yep.
And you don't necessarily, God's not going to be like, oh, don't worry, I told her to do it. Like, God's minding his business. Like, I told Ebony to do something. You don't need to worry about it. I'm like, I got it. But to you, it looks evil.
Especially for a church.
I like that.
Now, isn't that what we hear,
That was
though,
good.
from many religious groups that say, oh, God told me to strap a bomb to my chest and do this, and we question whether that really came from God or
I
not?
mean, so there is that extreme of it.
But it's legit.
It can be legit.
So shouldn't we be
No, it's
able to,
legit.
by their fruits, know if this conviction really came from above or came from within?
But
So-
did Rahab's fruits look good though? They didn't.
So depends on whose perspective. I don't know that the Agag and his people thought their annihilation was of God. I don't know that they were looking at it by the fruits of Samuel killing him, like pulling him out of the tent and stabbing him in front of all the people. I don't think they
Right.
thought, no, that can't be from God.
Well, first, Agag was by himself by then. But still, I see what you're saying.
But
Malachi's had
here's
their
my
chance,
kickback with that, because by doing that, you kind of force your will on everybody else. Because God told me such and such and such, so I'm gonna go ahead and strap a bomb on myself and kill everybody else. That I am living my life here in America, and I'm making my decisions based off right or wrong. But you judge my decisions, and you say based off your
Perspective.
prejudice that I am evil, and so you make a decision to end my life. So it still goes back to, you can't define good and evil based off your own understanding, because I think that's what they're doing.
God is really good.
Hold that thought. Let me get some of these things in, because these people are going in the room
Oh.
here.
Oh?
Well, there's a lot of conversation going back and forth here. Gerald says, no matter how much wisdom God gives you, don't lose your thought, Kenneth.
I'm not.
You still have the free will to make a decision. Sam says, Mike Murdoch's definition of wisdom is the ability to recognize the difference in people, situations, and opportunities. Lauren asks, does everything God allow in the will of God?
No.
That goes back to your
That
two
goes back to
different
the- yeah,
permissive will versus his.
I guess if he allows it, yeah.
But he's not going to stop you. You even if God did not tell you to pull the trigger,
Right,
you
and
decide to
that's-
do it. He's not going to stop you from doing it.
In
Like,
some instances, he may.
he may.
Yes,
in
but
some
that's in
instances.
some. The
Mhm.
key
Right.
word is some.
But he's not going to change her mind. He may stop the bullet from going into your head, but he's
Or
not
he
going
may
to.
not.
Or
No, he may not. But once you make the choice, you have done your part, and he will let you do your part. Now, the consequences, he
Right.
may buffer it, or he may allow it to be
Right.
as it is.
And I guess the question is, the question of God's will in terms of, is God's will that this specific thing
Or he
happens?
may not let you do your part.
Right. So the question is God's will the specifics of the event or the exchange, or is God's will bigger and broader in terms of, my will is that these people have freedom of choice?
Yes.
And if that is my will, then this is what they choose, then I
think-
work within the
Right.
the confines of that. And in that sense, that then becomes his will. Not that you die, but that you have the ability to exercise free will, but that you choose to be more circumspect or responsible with your free will.
But I think it's all of that.
Right. And so, I was just trying to
Yeah, I got you.
not skip over the question, but give a perspective to chew on, and then we can double back if we need to. Well, no, she went ahead and said, what does his will mean? What is part of his plan? Oh, I did answer it, she says. Well, if you still have the freedom to make a decision and you make some bad ones, like the bad decision Solomon did, can you still refer to him as wise? Which is the question we were wrestling with. Jerome adds, there's a difference between God's directive will and permissive will. That is what he specifically directs as opposed to what he allows. This Bible study is rated PG-12.
Oh, 12.
Well,
That's not bad.
Actually,
Wait till 9
you're
o'clock.
winning.
Great thought, Brother Jerome. And then
Jesus,
Jerry
Jerome.
says, Adam and Eve chose to sin and God permitted it. Then he reacted that Jesus redeemed fallen man even though he didn't have to. So yeah, Kendrick.
No, I was
Gotcha.
wrestling. I was I was because I was wrestling with the woman at the well this week.
Mhm.
Not the woman at the well. The adulterous woman. And at the end of the story, God says, "I neither condemn you either." And so when you said that, like, I've been wrestling with that for the past couple of days because I'm just like, is it ever our place to condemn?
It's not.
Right?
Unless it's
And
something.
then like what was just like the exchange that just happened gave clarity.
How so? What's the clarity you see?
The clarity is that you don't know. Outside of just explicit direction from God. Like you don't know. We look at results, we look at things. They look at this woman who had, I mean, she slept with a lot of dudes. Like
It's caught in the act.
caught in the act.
That was a setup.
Probably was.
It was a full setup.
One of the guy was probably there.
And they should have dragged him in there too.
Yeah.
He
That's
didn't
why.
get
That's
stoned
why I
too.
wasn't set up because he didn't get dragged in there
Right.
with him.
Well, I mean, that's
But couldn't you argue that
it was pre 2000.
Right.
That's what happened.
Me too.
Everything, yeah. Like that was.
But check this, did not Christ cast judgment on certain people?
Are,
I
we
mean, so-
using, are we using condemnation and judgment
Yeah.
interchangeably?
Well, I mean, he called people hypocrites. He called people foxes.
So
he
it
called
was-
people snakes. I mean,
It was like so what was, I think I was looking at the definition before and I think I pulled it up. It was like public censure, like condemnation had a public piece to it or part to it. It wasn't just straight judgment. Like there was something.
in the open.
It was in the open. There was something else that came that made it more public. I'm trying to find the difference.
but which is what Christ did. But he didn't do it with her. And my thought process is because we know that only God knows the heart. He knew that she was in a place where she had accepted the condemnation. She was caught in the act. I like to think that she was contrite. And when he said, "Go sin no more," he didn't have to condemn her because her heart was already in a place where she could accept, she could ask for forgiveness and accept the forgiveness that God gave her. Versus the Pharisees was like,
That's
nah.
a very big assumption.
express
she
complete-
Could, she could have very well just gone right back to the man, walked straight from there and gone right back to him.
But don't we do that? Don't we have
Right,
real
so-
contrition and then still go back? I'm just
I'm
saying,
just saying-
we've seen Christ been like, "No, what you're doing is wrong. You're
Caught in
tithing."
the act doesn't necessarily mean contrite.
True.
And there was no indication that she was or she wasn't.
I'm just saying from Christ's reaction because we've seen him be like, you guys are tithing cologne and spices or whatever. You're a hypocrite
Christ's reaction could have been in response to them more than to her.
More than her.
because they were using her to get to him.
Him, correct.
But isn't his duty to still call out sin for the purposes of saving this woman? And if there were an issue,
But I
And
don't.
he did.
I don't
Is
think
it
he
necessary?
go and sin no
So,
more.
I
That's all
think
he did.
he told her like after they all left, like I need you to chill.
Yeah.
But he didn't embarrass her in front of them
Right.
because that would have had a complete like
Yeah,
that's condemnation.
condemnation.
That
Like
would
that.
have
It
had a
says
completely different turn.
express complete disapproval of, typically in public, censure.
So it's putting you on blast.
Right.
Making you
Frustrated.
Which is not what he did.
He didn't.
But he
Everybody
did.
left.
But he did tell her.
Go and
Right.
sin no more. He had to say that. That's all it was necessary.
And it had to been like within context. It was specifically directed to what was going on.
Right.
So I'm still confused.
That's all right. That's all right. So I just want to tie up where I am with Ecclesiastes based on the contributions that you've given. It is possible to walk in a way that doesn't seem circumspect and still be wise. And it is possible for God to leverage that experience for His benefit later on. Is that about right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's the takeaway I needed. Because that's a word. That was a word for me. Shut up, Kenrick. Shut up, Kenrick. Shut up. Brad, talk
How
to
did we
me.
get there, Dad?
Talk to me.
Ecclesiastes was powerful for me, but I mean, the first thing I read when I was looking at this was that prayer that Solomon prayed in
First Kings 3.
the final prayer.
The final prayer.
Yeah,
First
the
Kings
prayer
8.
after when he dedicated the temple that he just built. It was First Kings chapter 9.
I think we read it twice because it was also in
yeah,
Chronicles.
it was in Chronicles as well.
I think the prayer is in First Kings 8. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
First Kings 8.
I mean, his wisdom is on full blast here, from what I can see. And what it really did for me is just it like brought me back to my foundation of how I should be praying. Because the first thing, like the way it's set up, after everything was done with the temple, he addressed the people, assuring them that the Most High had fulfilled His promise, and he walked them through how he fulfilled His promise, saying, the Son of David was going to build the house and place him on the throne, and he verified all that had happened. But then when he opened the prayer, he started off praying for himself, and just beseeching the Most High. Where's the exact verse that I was looking at?
The prayer starts in 22.
Yeah, so let me read it. This is what my version has. I got the Jerusalem Bible, so they took this translation straight from the Hebrew as best they could. And it says, "Then in the presence of the whole assembly, Solomon stood before the altar of Yahweh and said, stretching out his hands towards heaven, Yahweh, God of Israel, not in heaven above nor earth beneath is there such a God as you, true to your covenant and your kindness towards your servants when they walk wholeheartedly in your way. You have kept the promise you made to your servant David, my father. What you promised with your mouth, today you have carried out by your hand. And now, Yahweh, God of Israel, keep the promise you made your servant David when you said, you shall never lack a man to sit before me on the throne of Israel. If only your sons are careful how they behave, walking before me as you yourself have done. So now, God of Israel, let the words come true when you spoke to your servant David, my father. Yet will God really live with men on earth? Why the heavens and their own heavens cannot contain you? How much less this house I have built? Listen to the prayer and entreaty of your servant. Yahweh, my God, listen to the cry and to the prayer of your servant makes to you today. Day and night let your eyes watch over this house, over this place which you have said, my name shall be here. Listen to the prayer that your servant will offer this place." From explaining to the people exactly how Yah fulfilled the promise, and then praying this prayer openly before, like stretching his hands towards the heaven, he's reconfirming that, and then he starts to pray for his specific people with all the transgressions that they may commit in the future. If they would just humble themselves and submit themselves and pray and repent, even in their heart. And the one line I was looking for is somewhere in here, and it may even be, I may have even underlined in the Chronicles, when he said just one person, not even the whole assembly. If one person shows contrition and pray towards this place, then save everybody. To me, to have that type of foresight, first to speak about the promise you made to one man, and then affirming Yah on his promise that he made to one man in the presence of everybody, then to pray for the people and just show them, it's like, look, we know we have teetered and tottered with other gods. We have messed around, we have played around, and because of this type of infidelity, we have wrought, the bad things that he said that he would do to us. But really, the type of relationship that we should have is just like, if you would just, one person would just humble yourself to reach out to him, then he'll forgive the whole assembly. And I'm praying for that for you guys. And then not only that, not am I just praying this prayer for us as a people, but now I'm going to extend it to everybody who's not a part of us.
Right.
The ones who we sometimes go to chase after to be like them. No, let that person see us how we are, because that's what we were chosen for to begin with. His chosen people to show the world who we are, to show the world who he is, and then they can come. He's fulfilling that in his prayer. And just the fact that this just spoke to me personally. The fact that he's able to do that, and I'm accounting it to the wisdom, that he got. So he already has like a handicap when he prays. You know what I'm saying? Because he has that type of wisdom, it's like it should bring. I know the final verse here when everything was said and done, they had 7 days of feasting, which actually was 14. I can't remember the note where he said he actually doubled it. But anyway, it's like everybody went back to their houses and their tents, rejoicing and fulfilled because of everything that happened. And I believe that renewing also comes when we restructure our prayers and not just be for ourselves, but everybody else. Because the prayer, something I testify about all the time, is what me and this brother do every Tuesday and Thursday. We pray for one another. We don't get on the phone and pray just like, Lord, I need you to help me, me. We pray for the other person. But it really underlines the fact that it's like, I can pray for a whole number of people, but if I'm praying for myself, it's just me. Just me. It's so selfish. But then the Most High can inspire all those other people to pray for me. Now I got prayers ascending from so many other people that are going up on my behalf. I'm getting blessed. I'm getting protected. I'm getting wisdom. I'm getting the hedge around me. He's letting me do stuff inside his will that maybe I would not have been able to do because so many people are praying for me. It's like all that is exemplified in this prayer. And every time I read it, it's just like, man, it's like, I think the biggest thing with me, the reason why it spoke to me this week, because it's so easy, especially when you're trying to do the will of God and you fail so repeatedly that you just get on yourself. We've spoken about this many times on this couch. And this prayer right here is like a good bookmark for me in the Bible. It's like, okay, let's take the perspective off of you and pray for so many other people who may be watching you don't even know about. You know what I'm saying? Who may be a witness to the type of things you're doing that's helping them in their walk that you don't even know nothing about. Keep your focus on them. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. And I believe, Solomon just fulfilled that in this awesome prayer, even with the conclusion, That's what I pulled from this.
I heard you say, one thing I heard you say is God uses us to bless others. So he blesses me through others. And so each of us needs to be available and connected to him with the other-centeredness so that he can manifest in other people's lives. Right? Like, so for God to show up for you, Darian has to be in a place to be attentive so that he can use him to, because God don't just show up in godly form. God to send people. And what I'm hearing from you is that in our prayers we need to be mindful of that so that God can use
us to do his will.
To do his will.
And the reason why that's important to me even recently is because I've had conversations with certain people who just don't want to be bothered. And it kind of brings you to the whole scope that Ecclesiastes sets out. It's like, what are we doing this for? What are we debating for? Like, what's the end of it all? We all going to the same place. You know what I'm saying? So it's all vanity and grasping after the wind. He makes that so plain. So then, okay, what is the purpose of all this? Let me not restrict myself, saying, nah, I don't want to deal with that person. I don't want to conversate with that person because they don't think like I do. They don't understand like I do. So I'm not going to sit there. I was like, first of all, did the Savior ever take that type of attitude? Right. I was brought it up this week to somebody. I was like, if he had that type of attitude, then the dude who came through the roof would have never got healed because that house was packed with vipers. They got there early. And so the regular people who wanted to hear the word, they had to stand outside the house. You look at the that's why the brother had to get let in from the ceiling. So I'm like, you can never have the type of attitude to be like, I would never sit down and talk with that person again. Because first of all, that's vanity. That's like, my knowledge is way above his. I see things so differently. He can never see things my way.
And that was actually the takeaway that I came in from this reading, was exactly what you said in terms of, because in John 6, John 8, John 10, you see Christ talking to people where the end result was either going to be that they walked away or they're going to pick up stones to stone him.
Right.
So he could have made the argument, I know that they're not going to listen to me. They're going to call me a devil. Right. They're going to call me a Samaritan. They're going to, say whatever. they're gonna vilify me, but yet whose benefit was it for? So when you see someone who the Most High puts on your heart to pray for that person, to talk to that person, to minister to that person, you can't go in with the mindset that it's going to be fruitless. Even if that person is not saved, maybe you get a blessing. Maybe those who are watching on the outside get a blessing. I mean, I'm blessed reading John chapter 8 and seeing and say, before Abraham was, I am. I mean, that's a blessing. So we cannot make a judgment, going back to that, a judgment call and assume someone is beyond salvation, they're beneath us because of their practices, and say, oh, the book is done on that.
I'll add one on top of that. God might tell you that they are beyond salvation, they are beyond practices, but I need you to go anywhere because I need them to be able to say that they didn't know. And so I'm sending you, because that's what he does with Ezekiel. He says, those people are hard-headed, they're not going to listen, but you don't be like them. You go and talk to them.
Anyway.
Because if you don't talk to them, their blood is on your hands. So it could be that they are exactly what you believe them to be. But even that is not a reason. Because God may want you to do that. And that was Jonah's thing. It's like, if I tell them, they'll change.
I don't want that.
I don't want that. If I tell them, they might change and you might save them. And I don't want that. Those people they didn't treat me good.
And they'll call me a fraud because all of my prophecies come true.
Correct.
And also, if you think about the book of Job, where Job was complaining for 30 plus chapters, but it's when he prayed for his friends that everything came back. So what if he'd been praying for them all along instead of saying, woe is me? Where's my audience with God? Why has he done this to me? So I see a tremendous value. James says healing comes when we pray for other people. You know, so I could, if I never prayed for myself, I would still get a blessing. But think about all the blessings we get. Do we pray to wake up in the morning? Sometimes we do. Most times we don't. Do we pray for sunlight? Do we pray for air to be flowing through our bodies? So most of the blessings we get, we don't even pray for. So what if we just stop praying for ourselves? But when we stop getting blessings? Of course not. We might even get more. Who knows? But there's a tremendous value in not looking inwardly, but looking outward.
I have one final question too, and it starts when in my word, it says the supplementary section of the prayer when he starts praying about the foreigner. And in my version, I'm gonna read it. I know it's it starts at verse 41,
okay,
and it goes through 51. But this person is just, I'm gonna read it. And the foreigner too, not belonging to your people Israel, if he comes from a distant country for the sake of your name, for men will hear of your name, of your mighty hand and outstretched arm. If he comes and prays in this temple, hear from heaven where your home is, and grant all the foreigner asks, so that all the peoples of the earth may come to know your name, like your people Israel revere you, and know that your name is given to the temple that I have built. I was interested to hear, another translation. I'm going to just continue reading this part. And it says, if your people go out to war against their enemies on the way that you send them, and if they turn towards the city you have chosen and towards the temple I have built for your name, and pray to Yahweh, hear from heaven their prayer and their entreaty, and uphold their cause. If they sin against you, for there is no man who does not sin, and you are angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, and their conquerors lead them captive to a country far or near, if in the land of their exile they come to themselves and repent, and in the country of their conquerors they entreat you, saying, we have sinned, we have acted perversely and wickedly, and if they turn again to you with all their heart and soul in the country of the enemies who have deported them, and pray to you, turning towards the land you gave to their ancestors, toward the city you have chosen, and towards the temple I have built for your name, hear from heaven where your home is. Forgive your people the sins they have committed against you and all the crimes they have been guilty of. Grant them to win favor with their conquerors, so that they may have pity on them. For they are your people and your heritage, whom you brought out of Egypt, that iron furnace. And the thing I took away from that is the fact that even when I was reading, like going back to the plagues of Egypt and the cesspool of idolatry that Egypt was at that time, and how steep his people were in Egypt while they were, doing slave labor, and they see everything that's going on in Egypt, how Egypt honors pretty much every god that there was. The proclamation, or how do I want to phrase this? The reacclimating of his people to who he was and who his name is, so that other people can learn of it too, was important. And I take that from this verse, which is pretty much the reason why, it fulfills the purpose of Israel and showing other people who God is, and because there's so many other ones. I mean, Satan just polluted the earth with Molech, with Asherah, with Baal, with everything else. So the importance of who this God is, not just the God of Israel, but the God YHWH is how they, what we translated now in English letters. But I see the importance of that and how he spoke of it right here for the alien, for the person who is outside. And it just fulfills his purpose of what he wanted to do through Israel, which was for them to be an example of his people so that people can see who he was. I'm probably not articulating.
No, you're good. That's a description of what a kingdom of priests look like, because the priest is the person who goes between the people and God and shows the people how to get to know God and how to connect with God.
Right.
And they as a people were meant to show the people how to connect with God. So yeah, that's what that you captured it really well. So that's what's up. Kendrick, is the woman what you was with this week?
Psalms. Yeah, the woman was what stood out.
Okay. Alright.
The woman, I missed that part.
The woman in adultery.
Oh,
Woman in adultery. He tied it into the
condemnation.
He tied it in. Ebony?
Mine is just Ecclesiastes 7 and 9.
Alright, Darian, anything stood out to you this week you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I talked about it with John, those chapters in John. Even, Nicodemus, it seems like, the brother came to him at night, and even Christ was kind of testy with him. Like, you're supposed to know this stuff. Like Christ didn't mince words. He didn't shy away from conflict. He didn't shy away from calling people out when it was necessary. But he also was merciful when it was necessary. Mm-hmm. And I'm someone who likes to debate. I like to get involved. And sometimes I do it beyond its necessary course. But I feel that when I look at Christ and I see him engaging in discourse, in some cases, Nicodemus, we expect to see him in heaven, hopefully, based on what we see here. The woman in chapter 4, she became a missionary, told everybody, come see a man who told me everything I meant. So it seems like when you go into your interaction with someone, it's not about you being right. It's not about, you being exalted in their eyes. It's when you have a calling and say, you know what, for me, for example, I'll be on social media and I'll see someone post misinformation. And so I feel an obligation to fact check. And people look at that like, oh, you're ruining their fun, or you're being obstinate. But I feel like if someone has been exposed to the truth, it's no longer an excuse for ignorance. So if I see something, even if I agree with it, somebody posted something about Jay-Z, and there was an article, there was a story that was out there about him openly proclaiming that he worships Satan and praying that Jesus is a lie or whatever, which we can all imagine him saying that. And we know that his music we shouldn't probably listen to. But it turned out to be a hoax. Like, I saw that, I was like, that looks kind of funny. So I fact-checked it and found it was false. And so even though I agreed with where they were going with it, I thought it was my obligation to post, hey, here's the information, check for yourself. Now, if at that point someone wants to argue with me, then I should just back off. But I see that Christ, he's engaging. He's going back and forth with the purpose of not being right, not having his name being put up there, but saying, I want to make sure, as you said, that you have truth. There's no excuse, because you are, from this point on, if you go towards a lie, it's a deliberate decision. So it's encouraging to me. I just need to know when to stop. Truth has been put out there. Now I just walk away.
At least they're not ignorant in that. But I did have one more thing, and it was tied into the thing from this Ecclesiastes, but it was in John chapter 9. So it's John chapter 9 when the blind man gets healed, and the Pharisees are investigating his healing, and they make this statement in verse 16. Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." And I can understand, in the moment, you are, a traditionalist in your religious system, and if someone is supposed to be from God, there's some characteristics they should have. Some evidences of that. And if this particular one, this big one, is missing, then they can't be from God. But I hear this in my circles about people I know talking to God. You couldn't be from God because you go in the church over there, and it tied into Solomon because there are things that people are doing for God, with God, that don't look like how I understand things should be going.
Precisely.
That Nebuchadnezzar was God's servant, and he never stopped eating pork. He never went and got circumcised either. You study that. And when he acted up, God dealt with him like if he was his own son. And then when he did what Solomon prayed about, he restored him and elevated him again and gave it back to him. And so there is this presence there that, you know, we should pretty much mind our own business, because they are saying this about the Messiah, who is evidently, in hindsight for us anyway, at least in hindsight for us, who is evidently from God, and they wrote him off because something he didn't agree with their understanding.
It's so dangerous to do that.
It is
It's
so
so dangerous to do that.
So he can't be from God. Like you are definitely a sinner, because if you were from God, you at least know not to do that.
Not on the Sabbath.
The arrogance that is soaked up in that statement is because it's like a loss of the reality of who you really are. And that's the one thing, even in Ecclesiastes, he made the statement, what's the pleasure, man, to be content with his work. The only pleasure he gets is what he eats, pretty much. And just because, like, that statement is profound, because it's like, just like you said, mind your own business. Be content with what your toil brings you and not concerned with so much else. And to be in exactly what you're saying, is like, you don't look or sound like anything that's from God, so you can't be. To have that type of arrogance.
You said it.
And it's a blinding pride and arrogance, and that's one thing. I mean,
can it be a private arrogance that I don't look or sound like anything I understand God to be, so God can't be calling me?
It can. It certainly can be.
Like, God can't be using me because.
Well, what about this? What about if
I could? I don't know if that's the case most of the time.
But what if I look at you and I think that you are going down the wrong path, and instead of judging you, I pray for you? Now, you might be doing right, but me seeing you and making a judgment about you inspires me to pray for you.
That should be what we all
Right.
do.
Should be. That's where Solomon was advocating
Right.
to be.
So I can think someone is on the wrong path and they're not keeping the Sabbath, or they're doing things that are outlandish, and instead of judging them, I'm like, yo, brother, Father, be with her. And God blesses as a result of my assessment of where they are. But with him, clearly the Pharisees had a track record of seeing truth and stopping their ears up. Seeing him supposedly break the Sabbath and then going on the Sabbath to plot to kill him. Like they themselves are breaking
There
the
was
Sabbath.
so much blindness to like the foolishness that I'm doing.
That
'Cause
pride is
you over
dangerous.
here tithing off cinnamon.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
how do we get here where that is okay and someone receiving sight is not?
But that's why it's tied to my limited understanding in my own perspective, which comes back to defining good and evil on my own terms. Because if I'm defining good and evil as healing on the Sabbath is evil because it's not of God, then you can be of God. You see what I have just done? By defining good and evil on my own terms and my own limited understanding, without even seeking God to see, well, you know, what you need from me in this moment, or you just need me to pray for him and hush my mouth. All right, I got that.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of thing. Like,
So when do you call people out?
Right. What's subjective and what's not? I mean, what's like
You
that is
get
clearly
pricked, you
wrong.
get pricked to do that, man. Because if you're calling somebody 1 + 1 = 5,
That's a lie. I gotta call you out.
you gotta call you out.
Right.
I mean,
Sometimes you gotta mind your business.
But I don't
Sometimes you gotta
know.
mind your business.
but
I don't know because
But if you're preaching that from the pulpit,
because 2 + 5 fit a lot.
he's right. He's right.
oh,
I don't know.
you're taking it
That's-
to
that's the- that's the-
but that's the thing, right? Like you don't know.
You don't.
so there's never a reason you're saying.
I'm not saying there's
No,
not.
I think what you said with your private arrogance. It's if you have the humility to just to do like what we said. It's like I don't know where this brother is or where he's coming from, but I'll have the mindset to pray for him rather than just shut him out completely. I exclude you because what you're saying don't make no sense to my head. That difference right there, I think that's the meat of where this entire part is. We either want to be on one side or the other. What we don't want to be is like the Pharisees, who were so entrenched in the knowledge that they knew, they couldn't deal with anything else.
Right.
And built into the system is the whole relational piece. Like, you know, when I am concerned for you as a brother, my approach to you is a whole lot different.
It's a whole lot
and,
different.
I'm not as accusatory, you know. And if I have an understanding of what your understanding is, like you know, when I know you know what you're doing is wrong. Like when we share that understanding, because I know you're my boy, and you're not ignorant to this. I could call you and say, partner, what you doing? You know you should not talk to the woman like that. You know,
that
then
requires us to be in relationship.
And so that's kind of where I would say that would be the lead up to my answer for Kendrick's question of when do we call people out. It depends. I would say it's contextual, and it should be relational, and it should be engaged in that regard. But then there's those times where God says, I need to go and talk to him.
Right.
And then there's that as well. Because sometimes you don't have a relationship, but God says, go holler at my boy right here, right quick.
Because some of these prophets did not have relationships with the people they called out. They just went and they called sin by its name. Uncomfortable or not. But the problem is we say, hey, truth hurts. And so we take it upon ourselves without the green light from the Holy Spirit. And then we think, oh, well, it's the truth anyhow. I'm going to tell them, you know.
Right.
And nobody didn't send you.
Right.
That's the key.
And you end up shutting more ears and hearts than
Like,
than opening.
if I was, when you said that, I was thinking about the woman caught in the act. Sometimes, like, let's say God would have straight up condemned her. She could have just straight up been like, I'm gonna go out here and wild out. Because there are sometimes when you just go on your own and you just, I'm gonna say what I say because I'm gonna say what I feel like saying because I think it is right. You end up doing more harm than good. And instead of what you're trying to convey helping, you end up pushing people away. And it's not to say that God won't find a way to, you know, do what he gotta do, but it's like, yo, you check in with the Father first. Don't just run out the mouth at people.
Yeah, that was agreed. That was powerful for me, how they could, you know, write somebody off who's clearly from God. Because that's what the blind man says, you know, like, so you ever hear about anybody, alien people from birth, and he's not from God? Right. What church do you go to? I'm not going there. You know what I'm saying? That was mind blowing for me, because I never saw that line there before. They were like, he doesn't keep the Sabbath. I'm like,
yeah, I thought that when I read that. I mean, as Cameron said, I'm on my little path. But when I saw that, I was like, man, he's so close-minded. Like, they completely disregarded the fact that this man was blind. Even with Lazarus, like, he was dead, and Jesus was like, I'm gonna chill because I want them to see.
Yeah.
He was dead for 3 days, and they were like, nah, he gotta go. Jesus gotta go. Never mind the fact that somebody was dead. 3 days, we buried him. We know he was dead, and now he is alive. They were like, yo, Jesus gotta go.
But even when you think about why they were saying Jesus gotta go, they were saying
Well,
Jesus
big
gotta
picture.
go because they were in the. I would give them this benefit of the doubt. They were really trying to protect the people from
The Romans.
the Romans. They were trying to safeguard. So they were doing their due diligence in being the guardians in their minds, right? In their minds, they were doing due diligence in that regard.
Well, that's what church folk do, man.
Precisely.
And missed the Son of God in person.
No, it's like
Because he didn't look like what.
It baffles me because it just goes back to like, so you don't think God's not big?
Yeah.
Like, he's not like, so he needs your help.
But this person can think they're being used by God. Like, I'm the one person who sees this. I got to shut down. Paul or Saul thought he was working for the Most High.
Yeah.
And so he legit was like, I'm going to stamp this out for the benefit of what I've studied in his first few books of the Bible.
Yeah.
So I like to think that people are deceived, but you have that moment of clarity that has to come at some point.
I remember
It will.
Sherry saying, I don't remember what we were talking about, but Sherry was saying to me, like, you have to learn to differentiate between your own voice and God's voice. Because my automatic thing is just go ahead and judge. Go ahead and condemn.
Really?
And I have to.
Like off break?
Oh, that bitch, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
But you have to learn, when, like, this isn't God. Like, you have to learn to differentiate between this is my opinion and this is how I feel, and it might be guided by the principles that I live my life by that are godly, and what God is telling you to do.
So, the question that comes to mind is, are there ways to tell when something or someone is in cahoots, so to speak, or in line with God? Is there like are there universal things for everyone who is walking with God?
No.
It's just still small
But
voice.
that's the thing.
I
Like,
would disagree with that.
You think there's a template that you could follow?
I think that there is something that they all have to have in common that can be identified if our perspective is adjusted.
oh,
Without
then
Jerry,
that okay. Then now you've added another variable,
Yeah.
and the variable is like your perspective is adjusted by
His concerns and how God is
by the Holy
defining.
Spirit. Like
That's it.
Yeah, like
That's
your perspective is adjusted by something.
Yeah, but
But that changes everything.
But
once he's inspiring you, like,
there's
there's not gonna be
evidences that you can tell he's with
Yeah,
God, he's with
yeah.
God, he's with God. He's not with God, even though he looks like he should be with God. Because there must be evidences,
Okay.
right?
But it's still a download of wisdom and discernment.
Correct.
Versus I can't just sit here in a vacuum and give you theoretically, if you have this,
Yeah, I'm
then
just.
you are, that's what I'm
I
saying.
understood you to be like there's a characteristic
Right.
that everybody
Right. That's
Can
what I was
see.
thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
right without, and that's why I was like no. But yes, with the aid of the Holy Spirit, if all of us have this, hold the Holy Spirit, yes, there is something that we should be able to see because you have that download.
And when you have that download, common sense isn't so common. I mean, you talked about the story of Lazarus, and it always jumps out at me where it says that Christ, because he loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus, he delayed. Now that doesn't make any sense. This is a person he loved. It's not some random person he's doing a miracle
Right.
for. Because he loved them, he waited. So because he had that Holy Spirit download, he did something that did not necessarily make sense from a human standpoint.
I'm just thinking.
So there's things we're gonna do because we have that connection that may not make sense from a human perspective.
I'm just thinking. The writer of Hebrews was able to collate a whole rack of people who looked very diverse, but say that all of these people had the same thing in common. And I'm sure that there is something from at least God's perspective
Correct.
that makes all of these people,
Agreed.
and that's evident and can be seen. If it wasn't evident and can be seen, how is the writer going to compile the list in Hebrews 11? If it can't be seen, how is he going to compile that list?
But
he-
but he
because
didn't give
Jephthah don't look anything like Gideon, right?
So that's the thing.
He didn't give.
And he don't look anything like David or Solomon or Abraham.
But I don't know if that's a.
But there was something in Jephthah that was also in Abraham that can be seen.
But I think that, and this is me. This is pure conjecture. But I also think that those things that you saw can be misconstrued and used as something different, right? And it's not necessarily something that you would necessarily see in a godly person. And I see I'm trying to think. I think it was Brad that mentioned it earlier. Well, for instance, I look at people who have the gift of gab, right?
Mm-hmm.
The gift of gab can be used for good and it can be used for evil,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you see all these people that have this gift, but it's not necessarily being used for what it's supposed to be used for. And you have people that that have certain characteristics, right? Solomon's wisdom, right? Solomon's wisdom, although it was given by God,
was useful.
was used for evil, right?
Yes.
And well, you like your kind of. It was used for not God.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
I was agreeing. I was agreeing. I was in agreement.
And so you have this. So yes, I think there are characteristics out there, but I still think that you looking at it from this perspective can still see there's certain things like, man, this kid really has something. If he could only use it for what for good, for what God intended him to use it for, then that would be amazing.
But what was the characteristic that the writer of Hebrews pulled together? He said, right, but he said that they were following a promise. They died without seeing the promise. But he didn't say, okay, they all had this particular tangible characteristic.
But isn't that a characteristic though?
Of what?
Isn't faith a characteristic that can
How are
be
you?
seen?
But how can?
That's it.
How are you going to see that in that same thing evident in everybody?
Because they all manifested in different ways.
Yeah, but if you know what faith looks like, you could see it when you look at it. Because Jesus was able to say to people, "I've not seen." Just by the way he responded in a situation, I've not seen.
What does faith look like?
It has a million different faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's one thing that if Jesus could say by his response that is faith, then faith has a characteristic that is identifiable no matter
Only
what.
by this though.
Ananias and Sapphira. To everybody else in that camp, they were legit.
Not to Peter.
But not to Peter. And it wasn't to Peter, it was because he had a download. Right? So they're legit. And I have to assume that people were just like, yo, like, really? Them?
But think about what the writer of Hebrews did. He was able to look at the story of Jephthah and the way that he responded in his life situations and see that this response here is an example of faith. And Abraham's response here is an example of faith. And the woman with the issues of blood response there was an example of faith. And Jairus and Jairus who came for his daughter, example of faith. And,
Correct.
And so I'm saying that there is something that is detectable. I believe that there must be something that is detectable.
Yes.
I think what's detectable is the fact that they sacrificed what would usually be considered as human reason and wisdom, and they were putting that aside to something that was irrational. I mean, Abraham leaving and going somewhere he don't know where he's going. That's irrational.
But it was what you've always talked about. It was lordship. Like that was the one.
So in making that decision, you're humbling your own mind to the mind of God.
To mind of God.
That's
how in the world do you see that?
Without the Holy Spirit. That's what I'm saying. Without the Holy Spirit, you can't see it. You just look crazy without the Holy Spirit.
Because there's some people did some crazy things that were not guided by God, and I could look, if I'm using the same philosophy without the Holy Spirit, I can say, oh, they had a lot of faith. No, they were just stupid. Right?
So all these stories, the faith was seen in hindsight. Right? That's what he's saying. So like the people at the time, in the moment, couldn't have seen that this irrational decision was faith.
And they needed...
There may have been people who was like, yeah, Noah's a fool.
And the writer of Hebrews needed the whole.
Yeah,
that's in the present. You have to get a download because there's no way to see it. Then, if it's always in hindsight that you say in retrospect, "Oh, he had faith," then in the moment when you see something that doesn't make sense,
well, here's why I can't necessarily agree with that, because John chapter 9 throws that theory out of the water, because the guy who got healed was able to see something that the Pharisees wasn't able to see in the moment.
He was happy he got healed.
His experience was that experience.
He was able to see that Jesus was somebody who had a connection with God. He was able to identify it.
I've always
in the moment.
I've always not given myself the credit that I wouldn't be much different than the Pharisees in that situation. Just because nothing that happened made sense, right? And they made it plain in John. Like, we know where he's from. like, we know this dude. There's all these different things that make sense. Now, there are things that happened that'd be like,
Right.
right? But when you go through, like, other stuff was going on in other places that were based upon magic and, you know, whatever else was going on. So you're looking at all this kind of stuff, and in real time, it's hard to differentiate and discern, is this guy legit? Without having that experience that this guy had.
Like, was Samson legit? And you really look at Samson's life and give it a critical eye. Was Samson legit?
You really had to say I?
That's true.
That's true. No pun intended.
Yeah, it's like,
It has to be with download. It has to be with download. But here's the thing: if we were to turn on the TV and hear about somebody who was healed from their blindness, how would we feel about it? Spam, skeptical, demonic activity.
so no medicine?
Yeah, like just like that, like they have the fourth show, and he puts his hand on them, and that person is as convicted that this TV evangelist is legit as this man in John 9 was convicted that the Christ was a real deal because of the results. Now, in the blind man's case, I mean, he was following the real deal, but these other people, I mean, they were afflicted by a demon, and someone takes a demon away, so it looks like they've been healed, but everybody's marveling. So we're looking at it from skepticism because like that don't sound right. Name one person you've heard of that was healed in that manner that you're like, oh, okay, that's legit. We're always giving it the side eye. So I can see your point. You're like, I can see myself being like the Pharisees. But the problem is the Pharisees had a preponderance of evidence that Christ was who he said he was, and they refused to believe it. I guess one or two instances doesn't work.
Which comes back to my point.
There's
If you think about every Bible character, particularly those in the Hall of Faith, but even those who didn't make it, who the testimony is that they were with God, there were things that were evident that allowed you to know that in the moment.
There were things that I'm not saying that didn't occur. What I'm saying is,
but it's
also mindset. And you look at it, and we talked about it briefly, you know, with Roman rule and all these things. Like there were people that actually thought they were doing the right thing, right? And you have to take all of it in consideration. Like when you go back, and that's why, what's the joint that came on Netflix? AD joint?
Kingdom and Empire.
Kingdom, yeah. So it was. I enjoyed watching that because it takes it off of this and kind of brings into context everything that was going on.
There's a series on Netflix.
There's a series
the
called
Bible,
Kingdom
was
AD?
AD, the Bible Continues, but they changed the name from AD, the Bible Continues to AD, Kingdom and Empire. So it's like, you know, they had the series, The Bible, that was on NBC. They did a second part that picks up just after Jesus dies. And
it's like, it's got all the disciples, and you got Pilate, and you like
it's way better than the first series.
Okay.
It was
So it's like
well
action.
done.
It's not a documentary. It's like
it's
dramatized. It's
Drama.
dramatized
Okay.
on
It's on
Netflix.
Netflix now.
Yes.
yeah, you can get it. And so when you
It's called Kingdom
when
and
you
Empire.
look at
AD,
it,
Kingdom and Empire now.
and when you look at it, like it takes in all the, you know, the stresses dealing with the political rule and what the Jews were dealing with, and how the Pharisees and the Sadducees had to interact with Pilate under Roman rule, and like the things they could do, and like it just shows, it gives a little context, a lot of context to actually what was literally going on in that time. And when you take all that into consideration and you read this, you're like, I can see it. I get it. Like, I don't know if I could really, you know.
So I'm asking, like, more case, what's the safeguard and what's the thing to look for so that you can guard against those kinds of things? And I guess that's what I was pushing towards. Not even that we could answer it tonight, but more that we could start, you know, thinking about it, because there has to be some kind of evidences that we can see, or train our eyes to see, or in the spirit learn to see, so that we don't miss Jesus when he comes.
You just said it. You gotta ask for the Spirit daily.
That's it.
That's the best thing you can do. You ask for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding through the Holy Spirit, which He said He will give you as a gift, as long as you ask for it.
Because I don't know if there's another characteristic outside of lordship, and as we talked about, like, you just can't. There's a million different ways of how that plays out. and we talked about the drastic concept of a suicide bomber.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's to say that wasn't the case, right? Now we can look and be like, "There's no way that happens," right?
You'll know. I mean, the Pharisees
know.
knew. No, the Pharisees knew. I look at it when you see people who are being converted by the miracles, by the preaching. They got to a point, and we know every single person can get to a point where they can make a decision. The Pharisees made a decision. They quenched the Holy Spirit, and they could not be saved at a certain point.
Impenetrable, dog.
Impenetrable. They stopped their ears up. You know. You can't put into words to describe what it looks like, but you know. And when that knock comes, answer it. Because at some point you'll get to that point where you're out there.
But you need the Holy Spirit because they didn't know.
Yeah.
The variable that wasn't the variable is the Holy Spirit.
I would add that there's a faith element in it that comes with context and understanding the situation. Like, without the details of Esther, you don't see the faith.
So let me ask you a question. So can you go through the church you attend and identify?
No, I can't.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know.
I don't have enough details in the lives of the people, and I don't know that is necessarily my place. That might be the other thing.
It's not necessary.
That might be the other thing, that is not necessarily my place to try and make that assessment, but to be faithful to what God is asking of me, and to ask Him to show me whatever
Because Jephthah,
He needs me to see.
outside of this,
Yeah.
everybody else was probably like, "Nah, this dude,
I'm
there's
sure-
no way."
Yeah. And just
In real time.
if somebody give you a description of who he was, you'd be like,
Mm,
not
not
that one.
happening. Yeah.
Not him.
Agreed. It took a writer with
Holy Spirit.
the Holy Spirit
Inspiration.
inspired
To be able to
to
reflect
be
on
able to
that.
reflect and see that. That's the variable.
See. Faith in the Spirit. Or the Spirit to
The
see
Spirit
faith.
to see faith,
Wow.
which takes faith.
So
Oh, for those who are online, we're gonna do some takeaways right now. We talked about a lot, and we moved through
Nobody
a
had
number
any
of
comments
books.
on that? We're talking about this.
Well, Lorraine talked about the prayer, but we moved off of that. And when we started talking about this, Jerry said, "By the fruits you will know them," right? Lauren said, "My guide in life is never to make a judgment about who a person is based on a chapter of their life instead of the whole book. And because we don't know the full story, we then need to remain humble in our prayer and our assessment of said situation." And she goes on to say, we need to ask that download experience, or ask for that download experience. Yeah. Z and Ryan have been talking on the other chat, but we were late in pulling them in, so we tried to pull them in now, we'd be behind. So please, of all the things that we talked about, if there's anything that resonated with you or stuck with you, please share it in the chat, so that one, you can better articulate it and remember it for your own self, and two, that we could all benefit from it and maybe remember it as our own takeaways, or in addition to our takeaways. So if you could share them, we will share ours, we'll read yours, and then we'll pray and close. Have any?
so mine is not to define good and evil from my own understanding, and then also to be faithful to what God has asked me to do and run my business.
Mine was what Brad said. Like, I was able to go back and realize that I don't pray for others enough. I do it, but like being very intentional. That was a powerful reminder.
We need the Holy Spirit. That should be our prayer. The wisdom. There's the wisdom of the world. And there's the wisdom from on high.
So I know it will take us a little way, but according to the Bible, we already have the Holy Spirit. There was a gift that's given to us. What actually are we praying for then?
Well, it's given, but you have to receive it. I mean, it's there. And in the Bible does say in the reading that God does not give it in measures. So you either have it or you don't. You're either filled or you're not. And that's why the Spirit could come upon Saul and he started prophesying, but then later on he starts going awry. So it's a constant. I think you mentioned it. being bathed with the Holy Spirit, being baptized
Daily.
with the Holy Spirit on not even a daily basis, a minute by minute basis.
Yeah.
Being aware.
Because he's going to honor my free will. And so if I choose not to have him and push him out, he's like, okay, that's not what I would do, but I gotta respect your choice. So my choice should be to have that on a regular basis throughout the day.
Right?
My takeaway is every time I'm in this seat, I go,
Your
I got to
last.
do the last takeaway. And my takeaway gets taken away.
I'll start with you next time.
There you go.
I'm gonna start this side. I come around next time.
So what's
I can take your takeaway.
Yeah.
You're right. You still
I
got
knew
your
it was gonna- I
takeaway.
knew it was
What
gonna
is
happen,
the
too.
sum of the matter? Fear God and keep His commandments. That's my takeaway. That's my takeaway.
My takeaway is it's similar to Avanique's, but instead of not just defining good and evil in terms of what other people are doing, defining good and evil for myself and what I may be doing in any given moment. Because I never know when God is leveraging the thing I might consider to be evil for good. When Esther is, and I like Esther, when Esther is torn with, do I really give myself up like this and then be stuck for the rest of my life? So a man who was not my husband, do I really do this? Is this really what God wants for me? And she goes ahead and do it, and it becomes a conduit to which God saves people. When Solomon gets it in his mind to go and explore all this folly, and God uses it to, when he chronicles it in Ecclesiastes, for me, who several thousand of years later he would never know is going to benefit from it. I can't judge good and evil, even in my own assessment of my actions. And I need to allow him and the Spirit to help to shape what that is, because what I may consider evil, I didn't say God is going to consider good, but he may take and turn for good and leverage it in a way that I could never anticipate. And if I judged good and evil on my own, I might even circumvent his. I think about Paul when the woman was prophesying, and he turned around and cussed the woman.
Yeah.
How he spoke in a gentle term and get rid of the thing and ignored her, moved away somewhere else. Does he end up in the jail to meet the jailer?
Save his family.
Does God leverage his natural instinct to further his cause? And so those are things I was wrestling with that came out of Ecclesiastes and came out of John, especially when we tied the two together with Jesus and being considered not being of God because he wasn't keeping the Sabbath in the way people, it's the good and evil is something that God defines, and I think it's even arrogant when I define it for my own actions, and I should just kind of trust him in that. Vanessa,
You did not check your phone.
I did not.
And I was all like,
Oh, no takeaway, gracias. And there was no takeaway in the chat either,
It
so
was via text, so you're not supposed to say it aloud. Vanessa has no takeaway. That's not.
yeah. Okay. Alright. Darian, would you pray for us to close?
Father in heaven, I thank you for your Holy Spirit who continues to guide our conversations and bring us to a point of understanding we didn't have before. I thank you for your word that is a living word, that every time we read it, there's something new and refreshing that speaks to a situation in our lives in a way that it didn't before. And I pray for not only those of us who are here, but those who are watching, those who are listening. You know every situation, you know every struggle of faith, and we just want to make our calling and election sure. So I'm asking that you would descend upon every person, even those who are skeptical, those who have doubts, those who are needing an influx of more faith. Answer their prayer according to your will. Give us wisdom liberally without reproach, as you've promised to do. And help us to continue to seek you regardless of where you be found, not to judge anyone else, but to listen to your voice as we press towards a mark of salvation. Thank you for hearing and answering our prayer, for keeping us safe until the next time. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you guys for joining us. We will be back again on the first Sabbath in July, first Friday in July. And that'll be closing out. We have like 3 more episodes before we close out our 5th year, Henry. 5 years of doing this. And the word continues to be fresh every single time, except when we talk about Pharaoh and Z's on the couch, because we seem to get stuck there every January or something like that. Anyway, yeah, if you haven't already, download the app.
Download the app.
You know, follow the reading plan with us, read with us, you know, read for yourself, share it with somebody else. It's a free app. If you don't read English, there are other languages on there as well, multiple versions, so, you know, it's customizable. And you don't even have to leave the app to read, you know. And it's there, you just click today and reading for the day comes up and you do it again tomorrow. If you want a hard copy, because you like me and you like old school stuff, email at info@waterforthethirsty.com and we can organize to get it to you for free, because we just want to make sure you have it. Until the next time we're on, please drink up.
Drink up.
Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Hard weekend, it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer, I need you in my life. Time seems crazy, I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you guys.